Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are taking a deep look at one of the most dramatic moments of the conflict, Ukraine's bold move that shocked Russia and led to Crimea being taken back. This was not just an operation, it was a statement that changed expectations on a global scale. For a long time, Crimea was described as a closed chapter. Many believed its status would never change, no matter how the wider conflict evolved. That assumption shaped political debates, military planning, and international responses for years. Ukraine's decision to challenge that assumption was bold precisely because of what Crimea represented. It was not only strategic territory, but also a powerful symbol tied to identity, control, and long-term influence in the region. The shock did not come from speed alone. It came from how carefully the move had been prepared. Ukraine did not rush into action. Instead, it spent years learning, adapting, and quietly building the conditions needed for success. This approach confused many observers. Without dramatic announcements or visible escalation, the preparation phase looked uneventful from the outside. In reality, it was laying the groundwork for a major shift. When the move finally unfolded, it exposed how fragile long-held assumptions can be. Systems that appeared strong were revealed to be dependent on coordination, logistics, and confidence. Confidence plays a larger role in conflict than many realize. When confidence is shaken, even well-equipped forces begin to hesitate. That hesitation can spread faster than any weapon. Russia was caught off guard not because warnings were absent, but because the scale and timing defied expectations. The belief that Crimea was untouchable had become deeply rooted. Ukraine exploited that belief. By acting in ways that avoided predictability, it forced constant recalculation. Every adjustment made in response created new openings. This was not a single dramatic strike. It was pressure applied across multiple dimensions. Logistics were strained, communication was tested, coordination was challenged. As these pressures built, the situation shifted rapidly. Positions that once felt secure began to feel exposed. Momentum started to change direction. The psychological impact was immediate. For Ukraine, the move reinforced belief. For Russia, it introduced doubt. Doubt changes behavior in critical moments. Inside Ukraine, morale surged. Years of sacrifice and resilience suddenly felt validated. The idea that long-term goals could be achieved moved from hope to reality. This shift in belief affected decision-making. Leaders and commanders began planning with greater confidence, knowing that adaptability and patience had delivered results. International reactions followed quickly. Governments and analysts reassessed earlier assumptions. What had once been considered unrealistic was now undeniable. Support that had been cautious became more confident. The move demonstrated that Ukraine was not only enduring the conflict, but shaping its direction. From a military perspective, Crimea's significance cannot be overstated. Control over the peninsula affects access routes, regional security, and influence over surrounding areas. The Black Sea dynamic changed almost immediately. Naval calculations, supply planning, and regional security assessments all had to be revised. This change rippled outward. Neighboring regions and global actors adjusted their strategies based on the new reality. The operation also highlighted the importance of modern warfare principles. Precision, intelligence, and coordination proved more decisive than sheer force. Ukraine demonstrated how sustained pressure can weaken even the most fortified positions. Instead of direct confrontation, systems were gradually stressed until they failed. This approach reduced unnecessary losses while maximizing impact. It reflected a deep understanding of long-term conflict rather than short-term spectacle. The information environment played a crucial role. Ukraine managed not just military actions, but also messaging. Clear communication prevented confusion and maintained trust. By controlling the narrative, Ukraine ensured that its actions were understood both domestically and internationally. That clarity strengthened support and reduced uncertainty. Russia faced a different challenge. Crimea had been presented as a permanent achievement. Losing control undermined that narrative and raised difficult questions. When symbols fall, pressure increases internally. Explaining loss becomes harder than explaining conflict. Economically, the shift carried consequences. Crimea's status influenced trade, sanctions, and long-term planning. Changes their forced reassessment across multiple sectors. For Ukraine, this opened new paths. Discussions about reconstruction, reintegration, and future development gained urgency. For civilians connected to Crimea, the moment carried deep emotional weight. Years of uncertainty gave way to cautious hope. The humanitarian dimension mattered. Stability is not only about borders. It is about daily life, safety, and the ability to plan for the future. The bold move also challenged broader assumptions about deterrence. It showed that long-held control does not guarantee permanence. Time, often seen as favoring the occupier, worked differently here. Time favored preparation, learning, and resilience. Military analysts around the world took notice. Traditional models struggled to explain how such a shift occurred without massive escalation. The lesson was clear. Modern conflict rewards adaptability more than rigidity. It rewards learning over repetition. Ukraine's ability to learn faster than its opponent became a decisive advantage. Mistakes were analyzed quickly and adjustments followed. Leadership played a key role. Clear goals and flexible planning allowed units to respond to changing conditions without losing direction. Decentralized decision-making improved speed. When opportunities appeared, they were exploited rather than delayed. Coordination between military, intelligence, and diplomatic efforts ensured consistency. Actions on the ground aligned with broader strategic goals. Another critical factor was restraint. Ukraine avoided unnecessary escalation, focusing instead on sustainable progress. This restraint preserved strength and minimized losses. It reflected confidence rather than caution. The opposing side faced increasing strain. Maintaining control elsewhere now required more resources and attention. The psychological burden grew heavier. When certainty disappears, stress increases at every level of command. Media narratives evolved rapidly. Coverage shifted from endurance to transformation. The tone changed from survival to momentum. This shift influenced public opinion internationally. Ukraine was increasingly seen as an actor capable of shaping outcomes, not just responding to events. The bold move in Crimea also influenced diplomatic discussions. Positions hardened or softened based on new realities. Negotiation leverage changed. What once seemed like distant demands became realistic points of discussion. The operation reinforced the importance of legitimacy. Ukraine's actions were widely seen as aligned with international norms, strengthening its position. Legitimacy builds resilience. It attracts support and sustains morale over long periods. For younger generations in Ukraine, the moment carried lasting significance. It reinforced belief in national agency and future possibilities. The move challenged the idea that borders can be changed without consequence. It sent a message about persistence and accountability. Other nations watched closely. Lessons from Crimea extended beyond the immediate conflict. The boldness lay not just in action, but in patience. Ukraine waited for the right moment rather than forcing outcomes prematurely. This patience frustrated critics early on. In hindsight, it proved essential. The retaking of Crimea was not an ending. It was a turning point that redefined what could come next. Planning across the region changed. Security assumptions, military postures, and political strategies were all revised. Ukraine now operated from a position of increased confidence. Confidence reshapes risk assessment. Risks once considered unacceptable became calculated options. Fear no longer dominated every decision. This shift did not erase challenges. Losses remained real, and the cost of conflict continued. But direction matters, and direction had clearly changed. The bold move also reminded the world that history is not static. It moves when preparation meets opportunity. Crimea's change in status altered expectations more than maps. It changed how people think about power and persistence. It showed that even deeply entrenched situations can evolve. The moment will be studied for years, not because it was loud, but because it was effective. It demonstrated how pressure applied intelligently over time can outperform brute force. The human cost remains part of the story. No victory is without sacrifice, but moments like this give meaning to sacrifice. They provide direction when fatigue sets in. Crimea taken back reshaped the conflict's narrative. It altered planning, belief, and momentum. Instead of asking whether change was possible, the question became how far change could go. Ukraine's bold move shocked Russia because it shattered certainty. It shocked the world because it challenged assumptions. And it changed everything because it proved that patience, strategy, and belief can rewrite outcomes once thought permanent. That is why this moment matters, not only for Ukraine and Russia, but for how modern conflicts are understood. It stands as a reminder that power is not only measured in strength, but in adaptability, and that history can still be shaped by those willing to think differently, wait wisely, and act decisively when the moment arrives.